The alien Academy ship tore through the atmosphere like a dying star, trailing fire and debris across the frozen sky. When it finally crashed into the endless white expanse, the impact sent shockwaves through the ice that would be felt for miles. The cargo bay doors exploded outward, and students of a dozen species tumbled into the blizzard. Scales glittering with frost, chitin cracking in the cold, soft tissues already turning blue. The wind screamed like a living thing, and within minutes the weaker cadets began to collapse. A Zelthian with crystalline skin shattered at the joints. Amorthax breathing slits froze shut. Panic consumed them all as the storm swallowed any sense of direction, any hope of shelter. The instructors shouted commands that no one could hear over the howling wind, their elaborate survival manuals fluttering uselessly from trembling appendages. In the chaos, only one figure remained standing tall, the lone human cadet, a male barely into his 20s, his mammalian breath misting in the killing cold. While others screamed or curled into desperate balls, he moved with purpose, eyes scanning the white void with an intensity that seemed to pierce the storm itself. The human didn't ask permission or wait for orders. He grabbed the nearest cadet, a four-armed Krenix already going into shock, and dragged her toward a cluster of others. His voice cut through the wind with shocking authority. "Get together! Body heat! Now!" Alien students stared at him with compound eyes and thermal sensors, confusion mingling with terror, but he was already moving, pulling, pushing, forcing them into a tight huddle. The instructors clutched their data tablets, arguing about thermodynamic principles and optimal survival configurations, while their students froze around them. The human ignored them completely. He tore strips from the ship's emergency fabric, binding cadets together so the wind couldn't separate them. His fingers moved with practiced efficiency, tying knots that would hold against the gale. Then he disappeared into the storm, returning minutes later with an armful of twisted branches from some hardy vegetation that somehow survived this wasteland. The aliens watched in bewilderment as he arranged stones in a circle, as he struck two rocks together again and again, until sparks flew. When the first flame caught, impossibly orange against the white death surrounding them, a collective gasp rippled through the group. Fire. Here. Now. The alien manuals had calculated it impossible in these conditions. Insufficient oxygen, moisture saturation, temperature variables all wrong. Yet there it burned, growing stronger as the human fed it carefully, and for the first time since the crash, warmth touched alien flesh. The human didn't stop with fire. While the instructors were still processing this impossibility, he was already moving through the snow with purpose, his boots, inadequate by any reasonable standard, crunching through the surface. He tested the snow with his bare hands, pressing and shaping, his mammalian warmth actually working the ice in ways alien appendages couldn't manage. Then he began cutting blocks, using a sharp piece of hull metal, stacking them in a spiral that curved inward. The structure rose impossibly, a dome of snow and ice that should have collapsed, but somehow held. An igloo. The aliens had no word for it in their languages, no concept in their survival databases. When he pushed the shivering students inside, they felt the difference immediately. The wind died. The temperature, while still cold, became survivable. The human built 3 more shelters in rapid succession, working with a tireless efficiency that defied his species' reputation for fragility. By nightfall, the camp had transformed from chaos to something resembling order. Fires burning in protected circles, domed shelters blocking the wind, aliens huddled together in spaces carved from the very element trying to kill them. The commander, a dignified Praxian with 6 legs and a doctorate in xenobiology, stared at the human with all 4 of his eyes and whispered, "He leads without rank, without authority. He simply acts." Hunger came on the 3rd day, gnawing at them all with teeth sharper than the cold. The emergency rations from the ship were gone, buried somewhere in the snow or consumed in the crash. The alien cadets began to speak quietly of surrender, of accepting the inevitable, their various cultural death rituals prepared. The human said nothing, just took his crude spear, a pole with metal lashed to its end, and walked into the storm. The aliens thought they would never see him again. Hours passed. The blizzard intensified. Then he returned, dragging a massive carcass behind him, something with white fur and powerful haunches that had stalked these wastes for millennia. Blood steamed against the ice, impossibly red, impossibly warm. The human's tracking skills had followed prints that no alien sensor had detected, patterns in the snow that only predator-descended eyes could read. He butchered the creature with brutal efficiency, his omnivore teeth and dexterous hands working together in ways that made the herbivore cadets look away. But when he began fashioning the hide into cloaks, when he wrapped the thick fur around shivering students whose bodies had never evolved for cold, objections died in throats and vocal sacs. A Velindor elite, whose family had ruled their homeworld for generations, protested weakly. "It's dishonorable to wear the skin of beasts. We are civilized." The human turned, his mammalian eyes hard as the ice around them, his voice cutting through pretension like his spear had cut through flesh. "Honor doesn't matter if you freeze to death. Evolution doesn't care about your pride." The silence that followed was absolute, broken only by the crackling of fires. The transformation happened gradually, then all at once. Alien students who had never known physical hardship, who had attended the academy through merit or privilege, began to learn the language of survival. The human taught them to recognize edible ice lichens, to read the signs of incoming storms in the color of the sky, to conserve energy by moving slowly and deliberately. He showed them how to sharpen bones into tools, how to maintain fires through the endless night, how to pack snow into water sources. The shelters multiplied as others learned his techniques, igloos appearing in clusters like a village carved from winter itself. What had been chaos became community. What had been death sentence became defiance. The alien scholars recorded everything with frantic appendages, their sophisticated survival manuals proven worthless against simple mammalian instinct. A Threll academic, whose 3 brains had earned him highest honors in theoretical survival studies, admitted with all 3 of his mouths, "We knew the formulas but not the truth. Theory crumbles before practice." The human carved words into the ice wall of the largest shelter, common script that all could read. "Survival is adaptation." Beneath it he added in smaller letters, "Or it is extinction." The predators came on the 14th night, when the moons were hidden and the darkness was complete. The aliens heard them first, their sensitive hearing picking up the crunch of massive paws, the low growl of pack hunters moving with coordinated intelligence. The cadets screamed, scrambling into shelters as shapes materialized from the blackness, huge and fanged and hungry. The human stood at the edge of the firelight, spear in one hand, burning branch in the other, his stance wide and rooted like the trees that refused to bend in the storm. When the first beast charged, he didn't run. He roared back, a primal sound that erupted from his mammalian chest, and drove the firebrand into the creature's face. The smell of burning fur filled the air. The pack circled, testing, probing. But everywhere they moved, the human was there. Fire and steel, and something the aliens had never seen before. A refusal to be prey. Other cadets found their courage, emerging with their own crude weapons, their claws and mandibles and tentacles suddenly remembering that they too had once been predators on their own distant worlds. Together, they held the line until the beasts retreated into the darkness, their howls fading into frustrated echoes. After the battle, something changed in how the aliens looked at the human. The Velindor elite who had protested wearing furs now knelt in the snow, not in submission, but in recognition. "We thought your species was weak," he said, his aristocratic voice humbled. "Soft skin, fragile bones, no natural weapons. The galaxy mocks you as the universe's mistake." The human unwrapped his torn clothing, revealing the collection of scars that marked his mammalian hide, the evidence of a lifetime of endurance. "Weak," he replied, pulling the fur cloak tighter around his shoulders. "We climbed out of caves. We learned to make fire when our world tried to freeze us. We outlasted predators, ice ages, plagues. We adapted or we died, and we chose adaptation every single time. You think we're fragile? We endure." The aliens had no response, so they learned instead. They trained together, the human showing them how to throw spears, how to work as units, how to think like predators instead of victims. His lessons were harsh and direct, stripped of academy politeness. If you hesitate, you die. If you panic, you die. If you wait for perfect conditions, you die. You move, you adapt, you survive. The camp became something new, a fusion of alien intelligence and human instinct, technology and primitive wisdom working together in ways neither had imagined possible. The rescue ship arrived on the 32nd day, its sensors finally penetrating the perpetual storm. When the instructors descended the ramp, environmental suits keeping them comfortable, they stopped in collective shock. Where they had expected to find corpses and wreckage, they found a thriving settlement. Multiple shelters arranged in defensive circles, fires burning in protected pits, drying racks holding preserved meat and treated furs. The surviving cadets emerged not as traumatized victims, but as hardened survivors, their scales and shells and chitin marked by the cold, but unbroken. They moved with new confidence, with purpose, with skills no academy course had taught them. The lead instructor, a decorated Praxian admiral with centuries of experience, surveyed the camp with all four eyes and asked the obvious question. Who organized this? Who led? Every student, from every species, from every social caste, pointed to the same individual, the human, who stood quietly at the edge of the group, his fur cloak steaming slightly in the warmer air from the ship, his mammalian eyes reflecting firelight. He saved us all, the Velendor elite said simply. When we froze, when we panicked, when we prepared to die, he showed us how to live. The instructors exchanged glances, their data pads and survival manuals suddenly feeling very light, very theoretical, very inadequate. Back at the academy, in the halls where species from 1,000 worlds learned the arts of exploration and survival, things began to change. The lecture halls that had taught abstract theories of adaptation now showed recordings of the crash site, of igloos and fires and students wrapped in animal skins. The survival manuals were rewritten, new sections added based on techniques that had no sophisticated names, just the human methods or the mammal protocols. Guest lecturers spoke of that frozen world with awe in their various voices, describing how fire can burn in impossible conditions if will is strong enough, how shelters can be carved from the very element trying to kill you, how wearing the skins of beasts is not shame, but survival. The humans' words spread across the galactic network, translated into 1 million languages. Adaptation is not theory. It is action. It is refusal to surrender. Young cadets from species that had never known true hardship began to study Earth's history with new interest. The ice ages survived, the predators outlasted, the caves climbed out of. They learned that fragility and weakness are not the same thing, that soft skin can house steel will, that the absence of natural weapons had forced one species to become weapon enough themselves. The human himself received no medals, attended no ceremonies, gave no interviews. He returned to his quarters, shed the fur cloak that had become his signature, and went back to being just another cadet among thousands. But in the quiet spaces between classes, in the whispered conversations of students who would never see snow and ice the same way again, his legend grew. They spoke of watching him work, tireless and grim, while others collapsed. They described the moment when fire first sparked to life in impossible conditions, when frozen despair became defiant warmth. They recalled his voice cutting through panic and protocol alike. Move, adapt, survive. The galaxy had thought humans were weak, had cataloged them as fragile curiosities in a universe of armored scales and efficient metabolisms. But on a frozen world where theory failed and civilization crumbled, when sophisticated species faced the raw edge of extinction, only the human had possessed the tools that mattered, not technology or knowledge, but something far more fundamental. The will to endure, the refusal to accept death as inevitable, the stubborn mammalian instinct that had carried one species from caves to stars and would carry them further still. Fragile they had called humans, mocked them across 1,000 worlds. Yet in the cold, when survival demanded more than words or rank or honor, only the human endured.